What happens when an off-market acquisition expert, over 450 deals into his career, brings his focus into the world of short-term rentals and purchases his first Airbnb property?
And it was just so funny because he's like, of all places, Port St. Lucie. He's like, this is a really good Airbnb rental place if you can find one.
Jeremy Beland didn't just buy a vacation home. He identified a very specific 1 mile radius in Florida where he saw a huge upside. And now he has one of the top performing properties in that area.
As an acquisition guy for our Coastal Florida brand down there, based out of Port St. Lucie, Florida. And he's like, all right, but it's this one little spot right on this map. He circles it, and I took a picture of it. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Here's the kicker. Jeremy doesn't even consider himself an expert in short-term rentals. And as a complete aside, after this discussion, I totally disagree on his take there.
I would be a little hesitant to buy anything unless I ran it by Jeremy and said, hey, Jeremy, can I pay you for your expertise? Does this make sense? I think it does, but I want a second opinion on it.
My name is Jason Muth. I'm a 32-time Airbnb superhost. I worked in the media business for over 25 years. And in 2016, I started my chapter 2 in the world of short-term rentals. Since then, we've welcomed over 5,000 guests and their furry friends to our properties. And now we're here to show you how to create a smart stay. Now, here's our chat with Jeremy. All right, Jeremy, welcome back. It's great to talk to you again. I know last time you were talking to us, we were the Real Estate Law Podcast. Now we are Smart Stay Show, all about short-term rentals. And you qualify.
Barely, but I qualify.
You do. All right. So let's introduce you to the audience and explain a little bit about how this all came together. Jeremy was a guest of ours about a year ago when we were the Real Estate Law Podcast. We talked all about all this great off-market work that you're doing. You have all these off-market deals. You have properties all over the place. And then we just got talking again a couple weeks ago. And I was like, yeah, we switched over to short-term rentals for the whole podcast. And I think it was one of your team members was like, oh, Jeremy's got a short-term rental. I'm like, perfect. You're booked. Let's hear about it. So Jeremy, introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, my name's Jeremy Beland. I live in New Hampshire. I'm 48 years old. I started my real estate journey at 40 years old. Basically, it's one of those things where I wanted to get into wholesaling, which is how I kind of cut my teeth into this real estate space. And I sold a condo that I had because I didn't have any money at the time, and took some equity out of that condo, moved my kids into an apartment as a divorced dad of 2 kids. And I took a little bit of equity, invested into a coaching program with Tom Kroll and his Wholesaling Inc., which Brent Daniels owns these days, and taught me how to wholesale my first deal in 90 days. Went on to, with $11,000 investment, wholesale 10 deals our first year in 2017, because we started just at the end of 2016, early 2017. And, we made a measly $73,000, but we built the foundation of something strong, invested into more coaching, more ongoing training, built out some teams, went into different markets. As I stand here today at the end, halfway through 2025, almost 9 years in, which is crazy. We're approaching the 500 off-market transaction mark now. We're going to probably hit $12 million in gross profits since we started, and we've, built 7-figure markets in 3 different markets, 3 out of the 5 that I've been in. And that's my specialty. I'm an off-market acquisition expert. I'm not an expert in a lot of things, but I'm damn good at finding off-market properties and teaching others how to do it. So that's kind of what we do in my real estate business.
With off-market deals, a lot of people talk about that, and it's a grind, right? But if you do it well, you really can hone in on, if you really have the good lists and you have the right message for people, getting off-market deals is obviously a specialty of yours. You found a short-term rental, or your short-term rental right now, as an off-market deal. Is that right? Yeah,
that's correct. We have a short-term rental down in Port St. Lucie, Florida. So I'll kind of bring the story to fruition of how we got it, because it's kind of neat. You guys, we talked offline. You guys know Jeremy Worth.
Sure.
So Jeremy reached out to me, he just said, hey, Jeremy, I'd love to meet over coffee and just pick your brain about some business stuff like that. I said, all right. So we met and we're just talking, and he was talking about how he does his short-term rental management and things of that nature. I was like, oh yeah, that's something my wife and I want to get into. And he just started talking about specific markets like Myrtle Beach and certain things. And he talked about this. He's like, oh, and this one market down in Port St. Lucie, Florida. I'm like, wait, hold on. I literally just started off-market acquisition company literally 6 months earlier with Dan Toback, who's also our coach in our coaching business, as an acquisition guy for our Coastal Florida brand down there, based out of Port St. Lucie, Florida. And he's like, all right, but it's this one little spot right on this map. And he circles it, and I took a picture of it. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And it was just so funny because he's like, of all places, Port St. Lucie. He's like, this is a really good Airbnb rental place if you can find one. So I didn't really know much of anything. And no shit, a couple weeks later, Dan's like, I got a deal here, and it's in that pocket. And I was like, oh my God, it's a pool home. It's concrete brick, right? It's everything that we wanted. So we ended up taking it down. We burred it, which means we bought it, we renovated it, refinanced it. I guess we didn't really rent it out in this aspect. But basically that's what we did. We took it down with private cash. The house was a wreck, had to go through it completely. My wife and I managed the rehab from afar. Then we went down there and then furnished the house ourselves, which holy smokes, that was like the hottest thing I ever did in my life. But then we did that, got it refinanced with a DSCR loan. And, that's almost 2 years ago now. And it's been a great little property for us. I wish it produced more revenue, but, my wife's a super host at this point. That property is a super host property. And it just does really great for us. And we're really proud of it. And we love being in that part of Port St. Lucie. So we own a piece of property there, which we love.
So many questions in my head right now. Let me figure out how to organize these. The first question is, isn't that where the Mets play? There's spring training?
Yeah, down in that area. Yep.
All right.
So it's like this little neck of the woods, and it's what makes it great is like other parts of Port St. Lucie, it does not rent at all. You'll get 40%, 50%. When we did our AirDNA data, we were anticipating doing this on about 63% occupancy rate because it's right next to this town called Stewart and Jensen Beach. And, we're just in a neighborhood. That's it. We're just in a neighborhood, nothing special. We have a little canal with alligators behind us, but we have a pool. It's in a lanai. But the location's really good because there's a lot of PGA golf courses around there. A lot of people love Jensen Beach. A lot of people go to Stewart. A lot of people have family. So all these dynamics that Jeremy Worth said would contribute to a strong rental rate. He was 100% right. And, and we talked offline, last year, which was a slow year because of the election and all that stuff towards the end of the year, we still did 73% occupancy rate down there.
Yeah. I mean, to get that occupancy rate, that is incredible. Florida's such a really competitive market.
It is.
The things that we've underwritten, like, we're looking at 50, 60% occupancy to do well with those properties. Jeremy messaged me yesterday. I have a call with him tomorrow. He has so far avoided my invites for this podcast, but I'm going to talk to him tomorrow. Yes, we need to get him on. Rory, what's amazing to me about this story is, Jeremy's talking about all this expertise he has in finding off-market deals and doing all these transactions, millions of dollars of transaction over the past 10 years. And he's like, oh, we got this one short-term rental. And I'm like, how's the conversation going to go? He sounds like an expert like all of us. Everything he just said right there. What do you think, Rory?
I mean, I think he studied up on the language and the terminology for everything that goes on it. But I imagine that even though you're working in a different silo of the real estate world, what you've learned through wholesaling has to be informative in what you're doing in the short-term rental space. Is that right? Like, what lessons have you translated from wholesaling into operating an SDR?
Yeah, well, actually, it was probably more to my previous career before real estate because I was in sales for a cleaning service, and we did a lot of work with hotels and restaurants, which is a hospitality business. And I used to staff cleaning attendants like maids and housekeepers and dishwashers and stuff like that. I think what people don't realize about Airbnb, it's much more a hospitality business than it is a real estate business. We've learned a lot of things. My wife manages it and she does a great job. And I've helped her put out some fires along the way through my 20 years of experience prior to real estate in that world. But I think for us, what we found from a real estate perspective was we're glad that we found the house off market because we got it at a deep discount. By the time we renovated it and then furnished it, it's really hard to do that at a number where, you're not over, 100% loan to value, right? So we got an appraised value of X, to buy it, renovate it, and to then furnish it and be under that number is challenging. And I think it's even more challenging to do that if you're buying houses on the market, especially depending on which market you're in. So we were thankful. We know what we know now. Probably should have bought it at about a $20,000, $30,000 less discount. But you didn't know what we didn't know. I've learned so much through this transition. And for as far as the terminology goes, I will say I've read a bunch of books about Airbnbs as part of my education along the way. But reading a book and actually doing it and going through it are very, very different, as you guys know.
Yeah. You know, I think it's fascinating that you zeroed in on one specific area on a map in the town, which goes to show how important it is to really zero in on the property and the street, because one property in the same town as another property, they are not going to perform the same. If you're on a canal versus something that's a little bit more inland, that's a clear differentiator between those two properties, obviously. If you have a pool versus not having a pool, even if you're in the same zip code, those are going to do a lot differently. You know, so it's interesting that you were taught to look in this area. You circle the area and you found your deal in that area. Not everyone has that expertise or the discipline to be able to do that, because if they find something outside that area, they might try to bend the rules to make it work, and then they're stuck with a bad deal.
Yeah. And to go back to what Rory said about my real estate experience, I know that I'm not a deal maker. I'm a deal finder, right? So I don't want to go outside of this area, try to make something that it's not. And honestly, it was Jeremy Worth and his expertise that told me about that area. I would have had no idea. Still to this day, I would have no idea. And we're really just talking about a 1 mile radius. And, you know, we get a lot of the properties over the last couple of years outside of that area. And I always kind of look to check, because it's like, you know, it's a 4.2 or 4.3 big house with a really nice pool. And you like, look at it, then you like, look at the numbers. I'm like, yeah, I don't want anything that's going to be 40, 50%. This one, we're always looking for more houses in this area. We haven't got one yet, but it would be that specific area because I know it well. Outside of that, I would be a little hesitant to buy anything unless I ran it by Jeremy and said, hey, Jeremy, can I pay you for your expertise? Does this make sense? I think it does, but I want a second opinion on it.
You are really selling Jeremy right now. I mean,
well,
we really got to get him on this podcast.
Yeah.
You know, I will let him know tomorrow about this discussion. Does he have property in Port St. Lucie, or is he?
He was managing the one for Steve originally and helped Steve find that one on the market. But as I said, Steve, I believe, has sold that property. So I don't think he's doing much of anything down there anymore.
Yeah. So another thing you mentioned was furnishing it was one of the more difficult things that you've done.
Yeah.
Everything else that you do with your life, Jeremy, sounds far more complicated to me. So why was furnishing that specific property so difficult in your opinion?
Well, I would say it was fun. My wife and I had a great time picking out all the different furniture, and she, you know, we get a lot of raving reviews about the decor of this place, the style of the place, how, you know, how wonderful the mattress is. And a lot of that is because we've stayed at so many different Airbnbs along the way because we love to travel. We know what we like and what we don't like. And a strong mattress is one of them, right? So you learn like, hey, you want to, you know, maybe invest a little bit more for a nice mattress, just little things. But really what made it complicated was just how much stuff you need, right? So we live in a home. We take for granted everything that we have. But when you're furnishing a house from zero, we're not just talking couches and TVs and kitchen tables. We're talking plateware, cups, cookingware, cleaning stuff, right? Just like silverware. And it just went on and on and on. And it was just like, okay, we got to go back to Walmart. We got to go back to Target. Like, oh my God, we don't have any shower towels. Oh, we don't have any shower rugs. Oh my God, we don't have this. We don't have that. And it's just all these little things. Pillows and how many pillows and how many sheets of stuff, because you got to make sure you have extras in case there's accidents, and you make sure that there's always enough for the cleaner to clean them between transitions. And so just learning all that and how many trips we had to do to furnish the place was just wild. I remember for like 3 days, it was like 12-hour days furnishing this house, and I was freaking exhausted.
Yeah. I think this is a part, Rory, this is a part of the short-term rental world that I think people don't quite understand unless you're in the trenches doing it.
No,
and
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, I think so. I mean, the best education there is, you know, doing it yourself and really getting into it and really understanding everything that goes into it, and listening to this podcast, of course. But then, but for those who think this is simple or that it doesn't really involve so much of yourself to get going, or they think this is an easy money or an easy path to passive income, it's anything but that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I want to say that it's simple, but it's not simple, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I think that it depends on your brain. If you put together a list of 125 items that you need to launch a house for the first time and just go item by item by item, then maybe it's a little simple. But if you walk into a clean slate, I mean, Rory, you and I walked into a house we built, right? With nothing. There was nothing in that house. And we had to do exactly what Jeremy did, which is from the ground up, bring everything in, from the towels to the sheets to the mattresses to the Windex, right? And we had to know what to put in that property.
Yeah.
And it just requires a lot of organization, a lot of patience. Doing it with your spouse is not a terrible idea. Jeremy, Rory and I did it together. We're still married. I think you're still married to your spouse, right?
Yep.
There we go. Okay.
Yep, we made it through.
All's well that ends well.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your wife is a super host now and you have 50 something 5-star reviews. Why did you choose, why did you collectively decide to have her be the one that had the account, that is the name on the account, and launch it that way?
Yeah. So a few things here. First of all, this is, we own rental properties, right? And we've owned rental properties for a handful of years now. This is the only one we self-manage. I am not a big fan of self-managing properties. And honestly, if we had a portfolio of short-term rentals down there, I would probably have a management company in place. But because we couldn't afford a property manager and still make this thing cash flow, because it barely does at best now, we were forced to self-manage it. And, with me, I'm running a lot of different things in the business. She does as well. And she's also a super mom of the 5 kids that we have. But it kind of transitioned into this because one, the house is her vision. I'm the business guy, right? I found the house, I managed the contractors, but she designed the whole house. She decorated the whole house. And it's just something that she really loved to do and really took a lot of pride. Like, she had a clean slate. Like, you can make this house anything you want. She just had this vision. She went with it. And on top of that, when we travel all the time, she's the one coordinating all of our Airbnbs that we stay. So she just kind of had that. And she kind of transitioned into it. And, we've learned a few things along the way as far as communicating, but she's educated herself on what it takes to become a super host. She was determined to become one, with quick response times and, providing great value and great communication, and all those things were really great. And also the biggest thing for us is we have a tremendous house cleaner that Steve Nemowitz connected us with, and a handyman. So we can, in New Hampshire, manage that place down in Florida with little headaches at all, and it runs pretty smoothly. She just has to deal with all the guest interactions, and she does a tremendous job with all of it.
Yeah, I found that having a good team on the ground where you treat them well and you pay them on time and you're courteous to them, it goes a long way. It allows you to get things done remotely. And you're not even burdening them because you're paying them, right?
Correct.
Like, it's not like you're not asking your cleaner or your handyman to do things for free for you and you're mad when they don't. Like, you're giving them opportunity to earn more money, but you just need them to be dependable. And it sounds like you have a couple of good people there.
Yeah, we're incredibly grateful. They've been with us for 2 years, and we were just doing some light maintenance over. We had a couple days off from guests, so we're doing some light maintenance around the house, and we're having some deep cleaning done as well. But as I talked about earlier, my previous life with before real estate was in the cleaning industry. I worked with commercial cleaning services. My Mondays were always, nobody showed up this weekend, the bathroom isn't clean, the toilet paper isn't filled, all these headaches. And there was first world problems for hotels and office buildings and restaurants, and that was my life. Most people don't show up. When you have a cleaning lady and you have one guest leaving and another guest arriving and nobody cleans that, that is a big problem. We haven't experienced that yet. I'm knocking on wood right now. But you need to make sure you vet a cleaning person that not only can, if they can't make it, they have some backup plan to make it as well.
Yeah. I don't want to jinx myself. And now, since you and I last spoke, we launched a co-hosting business for short-term rentals in Provincetown, and we have over 20 clients there.
That's awesome.
About six different cleaning services in that one town. And then we still have the New Hampshire properties that we talked about last time. And, knock wood, we also haven't had a cleaner no-show. Like, the one time it ever happened, it was on me because I was before we had really good systems and I forgot to mention something. But, I think it goes to show that you have good people and you're probably treating them well and paying them a fair rate and everything, that they are going to show up. Yep. Right. Like, when you don't vet people correctly, or when you don't pay them on time, or when you're, the language that you use might be a little bit off, or the explanation and instructions are not necessarily good, then you're not going to get people that really treat it as seriously. I think that our cleaners treat the properties like they're their own, and maybe
Yeah.
you find the same with your cleaner, that they probably take, like, if a guest screwed something up, like, I bet your cleaner takes it to heart.
They do, and
Yeah.
they take good pride in what they do, and and you're right. You have to communicate well with them, right? So there may be times when things aren't perfect, but you can't be just jumping all over that person, right? Because dependability is almost as important, if not more important, as quality. Quality is something that you can improve on. Dependability is like some people either have it or they don't, in my experience.
Yeah.
But when we went down there, we were just down there last week. It's the first time we've been in the house in a year, and the house didn't look any different than what we saw it. It was just exactly the same, super clean, super great. We got her a beautiful a flower bouquet. We got her a thank you card and a gift card, and we just said, we're so thankful for you. Keep up the great work. And those little gestures are going to go a long way. I'll never have to worry about her doing anything because she's just going to work hard for us all the time.
I always think the properties look better because they get cleaned far more than yours and my primary homes.
They do,
right?
Yeah. I was surprised. I thought the wear and tear, because we rent out like crazy. I thought we'd get down there and it really didn't need much at all. We walked in and we're like, wow, this house looks brand new. This is awesome. So you're right. It definitely doesn't take the wear and tear like the houses we live in or my long-term rentals.
Right, because you're not in those more than once a year.
Yeah,
right?
if that, yeah.
Well, are there any lessons from the short-term rental experience that you have right now that you have introduced into the rest of the, what you operate? I know you operate a coaching business and you operate, acquiring lots of off-market deals. Were you able to take any new learnings and bring that into everything else you're doing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think like most things, right? It's seems like one of those things that's going to be great. It's another way to make a ton of money. It's very passive, and it's shiny and it's gorgeous. Like before we knew about Airbnbs, we were enamored about the thought of having Airbnbs. And like anything else, they have their pros and cons too, right? And, we have no regrets that we have it. But it's not like what a lot of books out there make it seem like, oh, you get like 5 rentals up along some beach in Destin, Florida, and you're just going to be, living life.
Rolling in the money.
It doesn't work like that. Nothing in this industry does. Nothing in this industry does. So just keep that in mind, that your profits may be slimmer than you want. I think it's still a long-term play as much as it is a short-term play. Our house is going to continue to pay down its mortgage and build out equity. It's going to be really well maintained. So, when we start to look at the property 5 to 10 years down the road, we're still going to have a really strong investment that we can do something with, whether we choose to do Airbnb with it or not.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key right there, that it's still a long-term play. I think a lot of people in the space got spoiled because there were a couple of years where things advanced very rapidly, both in terms of property value and in terms of rental income. But this is ultimately about what the properties will look like 5 and 10 years from now. What is the future rental potential look like? What is the future equity? And it's a real estate play, just like any other. I mean, in the long-term rental space too, which we're less familiar with, I can't imagine that you just purchase properties these days and have them cash flow tremendously from the get-go. This is still a longer term play where you're looking at 5, 10, or years or beyond that into your own retirement.
Couldn't agree more. It's definitely not like they say on social media. I'm not Scrooge McDuck swimming through the tank of money, right? It's definitely not like that. They're all long-term plays. And, one thing, and I would mention too, is, I think a lot of people struggle with Airbnbs. So everybody's enamored by it. And then every, Tom, Dick, and Harry says, hey, I'm just going to start an Airbnb with my property. And then they end up failing. What they don't realize is that you have to treat it like a professional business, like you would a long-term rental, a house flipping business. I know you guys obviously have run a very professional organization. That's what it takes to be successful. I mean, if it's your secondary home and you just want to Airbnb it occasionally, fine, but don't expect it to cash flow. If you're going to then take it and turn it into something that is going to be like an investment that maybe produces revenue, you have to treat it like a real business, not just a hobby.
Yeah.
And just if you think back 10, 15 years, the consumer expectations, the renters expected something entirely different. You probably could run a short-term rental 10, 15 years ago with a couple digital photos, and then you can come up with your own rules. And, but now people expect so much more. They expect a better experience. They expect more luxuries. They expect perfection. And if you're not willing to put in the professional systems to make that happen, more akin to a hotel than just a cabin from decades past, you're going to suffer. You're going to get poor reviews. You're going to get low income. It really takes that higher level of professionalism that may not have been true a decade ago.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And I'll piggyback off that. We have one 4-star review out of all the reviews that we have. And it was a family out of England, and they were upset because we didn't have a tea kettle. And then apparently there was some bug bites. The only guest ever complained about bug bites, but it was more or less, we didn't have a tea kettle. We have a tea kettle now. We don't get a lot of people from England, but that's the level of hospitality you have. And if you make one mistake, your review hurts you, right? Back in the day, there was no reviews, right? Now we live and die by these reviews. So if we get a couple dings like that, that can definitely hurt you going forward.
I think the bugs in Florida are a lot different from the bugs in England. So
yeah, probably.
That might have affected it. And, you never know. Hey, we got a 4-star yesterday, which was, I've had such a long string of 5 stars, like over the past couple of weeks. And we just keep having so many properties now. Like, I mean, I think that in our account, there's 27 different properties. You just, knock wood, stack these 5 stars.
Yeah.
That, like, it stands out when you get a 4. Rory was giving our daughter a bath, and he saw it come in, and he texted me, and he's like, WTF. And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's weird because when you look at the actually something I learned yesterday, which I should bring up here on Airbnb, the breakdown of the different categories. The guests can rate you 6 different things, but they can give you an overall rating, and that overall rating is independent of the individual categories. So like for this specific rating, we had like a 554, 554, whatever the things were, cleanliness, accuracy, who cares? But overall, we got a 4. And I'm looking at this and I'm doing the math, putting my calculator, in my head. I'm like, that's 4.667. That's a 4.7. That should round up to a 5. What's going on here? So I actually called Airbnb and they let me know, like, hey, listen, like on the guest side, they can give you an overall rating that's separate from the sum total of the ratings. But as a host, we don't have that. We only have 3 different things we could rate people on. And then there's basically a binary question. Would you recommend this guest to other hosts? Yes or no? That's all we get. Right. So they calculate these things differently. They calculate the guest rating from that sum total and the average. They calculate our rating from that overall number, regardless of the components of it, which I actually didn't know.
Yeah. And it's crazy too, because, there's a lot of pressure on the host, right? And as you guys know, we don't know what they're going to say until we leave them a review. So there's really no way to, argue or defend ourselves from any kind of review that we get. It is what it is. And you just never know. Somebody may leave it because they're mad for whatever reason, right? It's so subjective. You could do everything perfect and still get a poor review. And I'm going to give you one example. So we were some family at a birthday party, an elderly family members, and they stayed at a place, I want to say it was down in Florida, and they're like well into the 70s. And they were just talking about how they went to this Airbnb. It was like their first or second time at an Airbnb. And, they expected like they were at the Ritz-Carlton. Right. They expected everything to be perfect. And because they didn't get Ritz-Carlton experience at $120, $150 a night instead of $700 a night or whatever, right? They left this person a 3-star review. And it was like because they thought the dinner plates weren't like a certain way. And just the way they were talking about stuff, I was like, oh my God, you guys are like my worst fear. I can't believe you would do that to a family that's just, trying to make a living off of it. Yeah. But there's people out there like that. And again, that's the risk that we take. So you have to be careful for that.
Yeah. I mean, the way around that is really just do the best you can. I think people appreciate effort. They appreciate communication. They appreciate accuracy. They appreciate the fact that you have appointed your home in a beautiful way. I haven't even seen it actually, but if you spent so much time designing it, I think that the guests look at that and they say, okay, the people that own this place, they care, right? They actually put their time and effort into it. And then the messaging, what we found is the messaging really matters. We put a bunch of things in there like, please, treat this home like your own, treat this neighborhood, realize that our neighbors live here full time. So your vacation, is their home. Please be respectful of all this and that, and we try to like instill that sense of ownership that we're entrusting our property to you for
Yeah.
the days that you're there. And I think that it kind of conveys that way back from not all the guests. We certainly have had our share of, people that you're like, these are not good guests. But the vast, vast majority, I think it overshadows the handful where you get the bad guess or the bad review. The problem, though, Jeremy, is that we all remember those bad reviews more than all the good ones, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you're talking about all the things that you do, right? That's coming from an experienced person who really takes this business seriously and professionally, right? So you guys are doing all those things. A lot of people aren't doing that. And one of the things that my wife has done, she's really educated herself as well, is like, we don't accept anybody if they don't have a profile picture, right? If they have like less than a couple reviews, we probably won't accept them. So we're very careful about who we let into our house. We don't let in anybody like younger than like 25. We want to hear a little bit about who's going with story, because we don't want people going to our house and partying and creating issues. We also, if they're like one review and they want to do that, one review and they don't have a lot of reviews, we don't want them going in there. If we don't know who they look like, we can't maybe check them out on Facebook or something, we don't take them on. And we also don't do anything less than 3-night stays, to avoid anybody staying over the weekend and stuff like that. So these are some things that we've learned to help protect ourselves. We may lose out some bookings along the way, but we feel like the upside outweighs the downside of doing those type of people in our house.
It gives you a level of comfort. And I will say every host has a different level of comfort.
Sure.
Every host and every market's a little bit different. Some people do accept some of the things that you're choosing not to accept. And there's really no right or wrong answer in doing this. We do the same thing about guest profiles. Like, we toggle on the fact they should have a profile picture. And then we ask some pre-booking questions that are really innocuous, but the whole purpose is just to get them talking to us,
right,
and realizing that we're all humans. And I think that our questions are simply like, what brings you to the area? Who are you traveling with? We don't need their names. And is there anything that we could recommend, to help? Like, are you looking for any restaurant recommendations or things to do? And really all that does, it almost disarms the guest, because it then says, we get these paragraphs explaining why someone's going to be in the area. And if they, hey, where can we rent bikes? Then suddenly we're talking to them. And we have a personal relationship with these folks.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, this is your house. This is your home.
Yeah.
This is your investment. You can be selective about who you pick, and you don't want anybody staying there you're not comfortable with. And again, it's probably an individual choice, but I think some of the novices have to be very careful in that aspect. And if you're going to do an Airbnb and expect to rent it out a lot and make it a lot of money, then here's more examples of the devil in the details of how you treat it like a professional business, as opposed to just winging it as you go.
So before we wrap up, I want to talk about REI Freedom, which is your coaching program. And I want to find out when your short-term rental modules are going to be part of that, because you are far more of the expert than you probably even think you are. I think Jeremy would be really proud of you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. I mean, I try to educate myself on everything, but I'm definitely not a short-term rental expert. But, I've been at it for 2 years. We'll continue to buy more if and when the opportunity presents itself. But I appreciate you bringing up REI Freedom. REI Freedom is our coaching program. We've been coaching now for 2 years. Obviously, as I mentioned, when we started this podcast, I'm an expert at off-market acquisitions. I've learned a lot of things over the years. And then I work with Dan Toback. He's one of our coaches in the coaching program. He himself has, done more deals than my companies have all together in 10 years. So he's amazing. So between the two of us, we're over 1,000 deals that we've done, and we have a ton of knowledge and experience. And this has been a business that has completely changed my life, learning how to acquire properties off market, whether you want to be a flipper, wholesaler, you want to buy long-term rentals, short-term rentals, whatever the case may be. We specialize in really teaching people all the things that they need to learn in becoming a off-market house buying professional company in an effort to change their lives. A lot of people want to get out of the rat race of 9 to 5. And, when you learn how to get off-market deals, it's where all the best deals come from. It is a grind. It is hard work. It's not easy at all. Mm-hmm. But, if you want to be getting houses 50, 60 cents on the dollar, that's the best place to do it.
I will say, Rory, when you and I used to go to all the real estate meetups, we'd hear a lot of people that are looking to get into this space doing things like you're just proposing, Jeremy, which is finding off-market deals, sending out those postcards and those letters. And, here it is, 2025. I think, Rory, the first meetup we walked into was in 2015. And this is still a very active way to get into this space. Don't you agree?
I mean, every time we've spoken to people interested in getting into the space, every year there's some reason why it wasn't a good idea. The market conditions just weren't right. Things were wrong. And as we look back, it was never really true. Yeah, this year has challenges that are different from the prior years, but every year had something that was tricky, and the same thing goes for places. People say, well, I like that idea. We just can't do it in Massachusetts. We just can't do it in New England. Yes, you can. And there's always going to be some challenge, particular to the time and the place, but get started, or just get involved.
Yeah, if that's something you want to do, you get started. There's no better time than now, right? The only better time than now was yesterday. And I always think of the time of like 2010, 2011, after the big real estate recession, which I was completely ruined at. A lot of people were buying houses at that time, and everybody thought they were stupid. Well, when they sold those properties in the early 2020s, who was really the stupid one then?
Right. We're going to link up reifreedom.com in the show notes here.
Thank
Jeremy,
you.
the offer we're going to throw out there, I'll talk to you more about this offline, but Smart Stay Coaching is going to be your arm for short-term rental coaching.
Oh, I love it.
Throw them our way. We're going to be part of your program. If anyone wants to get some deals under wraps and doesn't know how to do it, well, then come over to us and we'll teach them.
I love that. Yeah, I would definitely be interested in that, because I don't want to teach that. I want to teach off markets. I don't want to teach you how to manage an Airbnb, but now I know the go-to guys to do that with. So that's awesome.
It's us, and I promise Jeremy will be a guest lecturer also. We'll cut him in the deal. Rory, we'll link you up on the show notes as well. It's str.legal. So if you're looking for some legal advice in the short-term rental space, Rory is the expert that we're hoping that you'll go to. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, we love it if you subscribe and share it with some of your friends, whether you're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. So Jeremy, Rory, thank you so much. We really appreciate all your insight. And Jeremy, I didn't know where this was going to go. This is a fantastic conversation about short-term rentals. Like, for the guy that's only got one, man, you're killing it.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.